christiangeekcentral.com.
Hey, Peter Franson here from christiangeekcentral.com and Spirit Blade Productions. I've just started my timer, set it for roughly 10 minutes. It's an egg timer, kind of hard to tell. And I'm going to continue on my bookshelf tour. We left off last time. I was going to talk about Final Fantasy III, or Final Fantasy VI, as it really was in Japan. This was, for the longest time, my absolute favorite Final Fantasy game. It was the first time that I was really emotionally invested in a story. It was just a fantastic experience. I've long been a fan of the Final Fantasy games, especially the early ones. I still am. This one I've replayed. I'm on my, I think, third playthrough maybe, and that might not sound like a lot. I know a lot of people that are big fans have been through it many more times than I have, but that doesn't change the fact that I really had a fantastic experience with this game. Next up, let's see here, what is this? Oh, yeah. This is Justice League Task Force. I can't really get a good focus on the image there, but this was when during the fighting game craze, DC, I guess, gave out the license for them to do basically a Street Fighter, Justice League game. No Green Lantern in that one, which really sucks. But they got Green Arrow, whoop-de-doo. But then anyway, I was just desperate. I was just desperate for any kind of superhero game that I could find. It wasn't a role-playing game. I sucked at fighting games. I knew that I would probably hate the fighting mechanics, but I was so desperate. I just wanted a superhero game. So I got that one, and with the help of, easy difficulty, I was able to get through the whole game, I think, on easy difficulty using Flash, because if you just hammer on one of the B buttons, he's got this kind of cool punch thing that can even take out Darkseid if you're really persistent. So so anyway, that got some decent memories with that, but it's not like a huge game that I come back to. And then we got to let's see here, Super Mario World, which again, this is just one of those games that I bought because I wanted to explore the world. This was before they were really making a ton of RPGs to fill up my time, and so I would, buy some games that I could get cheat codes for that I would enjoy enough. Let's see here. Okay, Turtles in Time, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 4. This one I bought for cheap, mostly just to kind of have, let's see, for cheap. I guess $8 is cheap. I can't remember if that's actually, if I got it at that store or not. But, it's a way to have just kind of a cheap co-op game around that, I can play with some friends if they're in the mood for playing retro games or something like that. That's really the only reason I keep that one around for. Next up, Final Fantasy Legend, which this is for the original Game Boy. And I just started playing this again on last summer during my retro game stream. And I really enjoyed it. I was amazed at how addictive the combat still was. The funny thing is, this isn't really a Final Fantasy game, and I talk about that in my video of that retro live stream. They just kind of put the Final Fantasy name on it. The original Japanese name I cannot remember at all. Something Saga, something or other. I can't remember. But anyway, it was still an enjoyable game, and I have great memories of family vacations. Driving long distances and playing that game. Good stuff. I might actually come back to it sometime using my my Retron. Tetris, just kind of, I can't even remember, this might have come with my Game Boy, which I still have packed away somewhere in a box, but this one, I guess I just kind of keep it around for when I have game nights and invite people over from church to come over and have a retro video game night or something. This is just kind of a classic a lot of people are familiar with, and so I keep it around for really other people's enjoyment. I really have no interest in Tetris. I do have interest in The Flash, however. The early 1990s, late 80s TV series only went for one season, but I guess warranted a crappy video game for the Game Boy. And in crappy it certainly is. I've played it a little bit, just enough to know that I don't want to finish it, but I someday I want to. I mean, I'd like to find the right codes to use on the Retron to make it faster paced, fun, and have unlimited speed energy. Anyway, it's, I'm just a superhero fan, so I do keep telling myself, one day I'll finish that. I don't know if that's actually going to happen or not. Up here, kind of in shadow, is my Nintendo DS, which in its case, which I bought a few years ago, specifically to play some of the video games that weren't going to be ported anywhere else. Some of the Dragon Quest games were only, as they were being remade, were only coming to the DS. I was like, crap, really seriously, only on a handheld? And then also my one of my favorite action game series of all time, action RPG, I should say, is Symphony of the Night, Castlevania Symphony of the Night, and they were taking that same game, those same game mechanics, and putting them on an independent series for the Game Boy Advance and Nintendo DS, while they did 3D Castlevania stuff on the main consoles. And I was really more interested in those side-scrolling, what's now called Metroidvania types of games, which was really only happening here in these games. This is Castlevania Circle of the Moon, I believe, is what the title is. This was the first of the Game Boy Advance Castlevania Symphony of the Night clones, and really, really enjoyable because I can grind because I suck at action games, but I have a thing for platforming games just because I grew up with some of them. So those are platforming games I can actually do. These are memory cards for the PlayStation 1, so I just kind of keep them in that little CD case. And then let's see here, Alien Trilogy. This one I keep telling myself maybe I'll one day finish. Honestly, I just couldn't get any money for this, I don't think. So, I mean, if you want this game and want to pay shipping for it, maybe leave me a note in the comments, and if we can establish a rapport of trust, then maybe I'll send it your way, because I really have no interest in... I don't know why I still have this. Anyway, moving on. Now I get to talk about, again, Castlevania Symphony of the Night for the PlayStation 1. This is just a fantastic game. This one, it ages so well because they didn't go into the 3D graphics. Even though it was a PlayStation 1 game and they were starting to get into 3D graphics, they didn't move into that. They kept it with sprites, and as a result, I think it ages so much better. One thing that's of note for me particularly with this game is it was the first game where I noticed them doing any kind of commentary on religious themes. It's very brief and it's almost nothing, but Dracula at the beginning of this game says something. He makes an offhand comment about the nature of all religions, and I can't even remember what the comment was, but it just, when I remember playing it, I was like, oh, that's interesting that they're making kind of commentary on religion in a video game. And now, of course, you're going to find commentary on religion, in broad strokes, and of course across all kinds of game genres. I would say mostly in RPGs, but anyway, that's of note to me. But I think the thing that I most remember about it is not that little comment, but the fact that it's just a fantastically fun action RPG. All right, sorry, my phone died out on me. Okay, now this is Final Fantasy Origins, which includes Final Fantasy 1 and 2 remade for the original PlayStation. And this I bought, I think, when I was already had a PlayStation 2, but I went back and played this. This is definitely my preferred way to play Final Fantasy. Final Fantasy 2 is okay. It actually, I guess the original, before Elder Scrolls was doing it, I think, Final Fantasy 2 used a leveling up system where you leveled up by doing the things you want to be good at. So, getting hit made your armor skill better, and fighting bad guys made your weapon skill better, and using spells, and so on and so forth. But there's also lots of ways to game that system and really just kind of cheat the crap out of it. So it's understandable why a lot of people don't like Final Fantasy 2. But I'm actually playing through Final Fantasy, this remake, on my PlayStation Vita right now, and after that I'm planning on getting back into Final Fantasy 2, because that's the Final Fantasy game I think I've played the least, aside from maybe Final Fantasy 3. But anyway, that was a nice upgrade that still holds up pretty well today graphically. I'm not sure why I bought this when I did. Oh yeah, I remember. This is Final Fantasy Chronicles. It's got Final Fantasy 4, or it was released as 2 in the US, and Chrono Trigger. I'm not really going to talk about these because I already talked about Final Fantasy 2/4 and Chrono Trigger in a previous bookshelf tour segment. But they both had opening animated cinematics, and I think maybe peppered throughout Chrono Trigger had some cinematics that they added for this. So the menus opening up and closing are still just a little bit delayed. They're not as bad as Final Fantasy VI as it was re-released for PlayStation, but I would still rather play these games on the original cartridges, and since I have them, I can do that. But I mean, I still like hanging on to them because of the cinematics, which I suppose I could just watch on YouTube these days. But anyway, moving along, this is Final Fantasy Anthology. This was the first time that I was able to play Final Fantasy V legally. I did dip into a ROM and emulator years and years ago to try it out, but I didn't really finish it all the way. But when this came out, then I played through Final Fantasy V properly all the way, and again, with Final Fantasy, I can't remember how bad the menus were opening and closing on Final Fantasy V, but in Final Fantasy VI on this one, holy crap, it takes way too long just to open up your equipment menu. I mean, this is a terrible, terrible way to play Final Fantasy VI, in my opinion. You're much better off playing it in any other way that it's been released. But anyway, that was still very exciting to be able to play Final Fantasy V, especially. Final Fantasy VII. Now, a lot of people will herald this as the best Final Fantasy. I certainly enjoyed it. It was, a huge upgrade from Final Fantasy VI in terms of like graphics and sound and all these cinematics and stuff. I mean, it was really one heck of an experience. But the problem is, it just doesn't age well. I mean, these guys are people made out of triangles that are walking around if you try to play this today. They are doing the remake, which I don't have any particular, excitement for, because this doesn't have a lot of nostalgia for me. I'd actually much rather buy this game on PC and then use some mods, some texture mods, to kind of like get an updated experience of Final Fantasy VII. But I'm still looking forward to the update, because I think it's going to be different enough from this to warrant playing. But there's Final Fantasy VII. Still have the original CDs. I suppose this is probably worth something. Eventually, I will probably sell this when I feel like the market for it has hit its peak. Maybe it already has. I'm just too lazy to find out. Use it to buy some other games or something. I'm not really like a collector. Some of these things that I hang on to, it's just because I'm like, well, I'll sell it someday and then use that to get more games, but then I'm lazy and never get around to doing that. So, moving on, Final Fantasy VIII. Now, a lot of people don't like this game. I actually like it. I quite a bit, actually. None of the stories for any of these Final Fantasy games are really like captivating for me. I find them extremely forgettable in all of the games. This was the first one that used like normally proportioned people instead of little sprites with giant heads. But the thing that's actually most memorable to me about this game is the magic system. It uses this draw system whereby instead of buying your spells and having like an MP meter that you have to keep track of to use your spells, you have to draw your spells from enemies, and you keep collecting them. It's kind of like, a collectible card game where you draw copies of spells out of enemies. So it's like, for people that like collecting things in games, this is, I think, a great option. The magic system is all based on collecting copies of spells that you suck out of bad guys as you defeat them. Really enjoyable. And I haven't played through this game completely a second time, but it is kind of on my to-do list. What I'd like to do is buy it on PC so that, again, I can use some texture mods. Because, again, although I think this one ages better than Final Fantasy VII, it still doesn't age very well. Okay, that is all the time. My timer was kind of sputtering and slowly ringing over there, but my time is definitely up. So next time we will pick it up, maybe mentioning my PS Vita if I remember, and then talking about Final Fantasy Tactics.
For thine is the Christian, and the geek, and the central.com.